Hello right bags, it's Jade. Welcome to another top 10 tips in 10 minutes. No mucking around, go and check out the first video I've done. This is still a starter guide designed to give you top help in the early stages. Don't forget to like if you find it useful. Let's go. Tip number 1, you have to make this potion to progress the story. Also, did you know it replenishes all of your food, all of your protein, your macronutrients and your health when you go through this stage. The first encampment you'll come across the little pot. You need to add 2 particular ingredients and then you can go ahead and make this hallucinogenic potion. Once it's finished, you'll realise that all of your nutrients have been replenished, your health, your food and your energy bars are all 100%. So if you've been having a bit of a tough time in green hell, you've maybe got some infections you don't know how to cure, or you just simply don't have enough meat or resources, hurry up and get the 2 vital ingredients that you need to do the potion. This is one of them, the red berries on that bush there. You'll find plenty of them in and around where the actual pot is. And the second one you'll find amongst the big, large, fatter trees. Not the ones that just have simply the vines hanging from them. These are definitely much bigger than these. These are the ones that have got the ropes. But these bigger trees here, this is where you're going to find the special root that you need to make the potion. You only need 1 of each, so don't bother gathering or harvesting any more than you need, and this is going to help you make it. Now you will need to craft that potion a couple other times later on, but you'll find plenty of them same resources later on as well, so don't bother harvesting or going and collecting too much. Its full name is the Banistheropis plant root thingamajig, that one. When you've collected both of them, you simply have to light a fire on the fire underneath, and as long as you've got in your inventory, it should give you the option to insert them. You don't need to drop them on or anything like that. Just look over the pot a little bit more and it should give you that option. You'll then be able to make that ayahuasca. Tip 2, if you want a build where you're not going to get wet all the time, caves are a great alternative to having to build a whole base. This is one of the smallest. It actually opens a doorway later on in the game, but it's a good place to put a fire and not have it put out by any of the rain. You'll find it literally when you first spawn after the events where literally you're going to survive on your own. It's to the left hand side up the hill. You can't really miss it. An even better one to find is when you get to the encampment, follow the river, making sure you're on the left hand side of the river, and eventually you will get to this log that's going across it. Up here is another small cave where it's actually quite large. There's an iron ore in here as well as some other resources, and you can go ahead and build stuff, and this is pretty good and safe too. Not all caves are absolutely 100% okay. Later on in the game though, some of these caves that you come across will have enemies or creatures. Now both these locations lead me to top tip number 3, get yourself some obsidian weapons or materials to build. Obsidian makes great axes and spears, and they're actually sharper than just simply stone, so you'll do more damage to creatures. Now obsidian you'll find anywhere where there's large rocky places, usually at the bottom of cliffs, so you may find some more in and around these areas, but I've always guaranteed usually to find one at that entrance near the start and in the cave that I just showed you guys. You only need 1 piece of obsidian as well as a stick and some rope to make the axe, and 1 piece of obsidian, a long stick and rope to make the spear. These are both stronger than stone and they're certainly sharper, so they'll do a lot more damage. Usually with the obsidian spear you can take down most of the smaller creatures with just 1 hit. Tip 4, bows are pretty useless to use in the early game. You really do need to get a lot of practice with it to make most of it. So do try and craft a bow as soon as possible, and do use it to take aim at smaller creatures to build up your skill points. It's literally 1 long stick and 1 or 2 rope to make the bow, and to craft the actual arrows you only need 2 feathers and a small stick. I find it super hard to use the bow on console because for some reason you have to click the right stick in. Also make sure you got plenty of energy as it uses huge amounts holding this. Another reason to get plenty of practice with the bow early game. And that leads to tip number 5. Don't be too scared of some of the big creatures. In fact, it only takes a couple of good well placed shots to take out creatures like the jaguar. This was the first time I've ever killed this, and I've played Green Hell a bunch of times on PC in the past. I've always been too scared to go close up to them. They are going to attack you though, unless you manage to pull off them shots pretty quick, but usually an arrow and definitely 1 to the head and you'll bring it down. What you also need to make sure though is that you have got a particular bandage to stop the attack. I gave a breakdown briefly of the bandages in the first part of my top 10 tips, go and check that out, but generally you need the ash bandage. You need to look at the wound and then apply the ash bandage. Now you'll get plenty of ash when you've made the Horasaka potion, so make sure you pick up some of the ash and you make a bandage before going and venturing in the next stage. And in general, always make sure you've got an ash bandage with you to take care of any bites. Don't forget to also take out your arrows from your kill and make sure you go ahead and harvest it. The Jaguar gives a nice hefty amount of meat and gives a huge amount of protein as well as some fats when you eat it. Tip 6, always wash your hands before you pretty much prepare or do anything. Even putting meat on a fire, make sure that you haven't got any of them blobs showing up on your bar before you go and prepare anything. If not, you risk the chance of getting parasites. And parasites are fairly easy to cure though, as long as you don't get too many, by finding the little orange cup mushrooms. I've explained about the mushrooms in the first part of this series, but I did want to go over it one more time because parasites can actually really harm and kill you much quicker than some of the other stuff if you don't actually treat it. And it's one of the things that you can't really tell what's going on sometimes when you've got just the inspect sign and nothing really is showing. You can see because I haven't washed my hands, when I go to pick up my cooked meat, that's when I also get the parasites. So always wash your hands before you touch your food. Like real life, you know? Number 7, pay attention to your watch showing you what you need, but don't panic too much if one of them gets too low. Generally, unless it's the water one, the other 3 macronutrients will just pretty much stop you from gaining as much energy. Or they'll use up more energy when you do tasks. So of course it is better to manage it and make sure you've got all the right components. Eating lots of nuts that you'll find, especially the Brazil nut, which you'll always find underneath these sort of orange kind of flaky low shrub trees. You can also get fats from coconuts and obviously some of the creatures that you kill as well. Generally more of the larger ones like the tapir. You'll get plenty of carbs from fruit, and my suggestion is keep this at 100% wherever you can. So eat as much fruit as soon as you come across it. As it spoils so quickly, you might as well make sure you're eating as much as possible. I showed you guys how to get water easily using coconut shells, but don't forget that fruit also refills your hydration too. You also get some carbs from mushrooms too. For protein, well, we've already covered, killing certain creatures will give you more protein, especially things like the jaguar, but there's lots of ways that you'll get meat, from dead rodents to birds to all the small little armadillos that run around, and their larger ones that you'll come across later. Sometimes it's okay to eat raw meat or raw foods, particularly grubs that you find in these tree trunks. They do reduce your sanity by quite a lot, -5, but you can see I got 8 protein points there by eating it raw. This one's definitely a bit of a trade-off. If you go ahead and cook the grubs, you will get less protein, so you'll only get like 5, but you will only get 2 minus reduction in your insanity. So as long as you're able to sleep or you're standing next to a fire, you will replenish your sanity bar easily. So definitely if you're running really desperately low on protein, go ahead and eat some raw grubs. There is a free trap just outside the encampment that you first come to, just by all the banana trees and plants, but be warned, there are Brazilian spiders here. They can bite you and give you a venom bite, so you have to be careful, but set the trap and you normally will come across some that you've captured. You can just pick them up safely and go ahead and cook them and get at least 4 protein. Not the best amount, but you can also use these for other traps later on in the game. They do relatively cook pretty quickly, but like I said, you won't get much protein, but it's still better than nothing. But be warned, it does reduce your sanity. Even when you've cooked them, they're going to reduce it by 5. So you make sure you're always by your fire for a little while after, just to replenish it. And lastly, how to get kindling or tinder for fires. This is something I had a problem with early game, but there's a few different ways. You can put leaves on top of the dryer, and over time they'll dry out. Another way is to craft them or dismantle them from some of the herbs, like the tobacco leaf. You can go ahead and harvest these if you've already made some bandages, and it will give you fibre. You can use fibre exactly the same way as tinder, and it will light fires for you. But the easiest way is to just find the dried leaves. I totally forgot about this in playing the game. Everything else you had to learn. You'll often find these dried leaves alongside the plants or on the floor. So look out for them. They also become dry leaves whenever you chop down a palm plant and leave any of the fronds. And there you go, that's 10 more start tips under 10 minutes to get you going. Of course, there's lots more complexities, but just quick and easy to get you going if you find the game hard. Greenhell is one of the toughest survival games I've ever played, but once you start getting used to the mechanics, it does get a lot easier. The control system on console does need a little bit of work, it does feel a little bit cumbersome, and I'm hoping they may re-examine that in the future. If not, just pay attention, make sure you always got stuff prepared before you go on an adventure and explore, and always save your game. Until next time, ratbags, laters.